So today we're going to just go over how to make a beeswax wrap. It's a really simple DIY project we can do at home, and we'll walk you through those steps. Before we begin, I'm just going to go over some of the ingredients that we use to make the wraps. We start with beeswax pellets, which are the material we put into the mixture to make it antibacterial. We use pine resin, which is essentially pine sap, and that's what makes the fabric be able to bend and be sticky. And then we also use jojoba oil. And of course, there's fabric. 100% cotton is the best kind of fabric to use for this. It just absorbs the mixture best and is also easy to find at secondhand stores or from people who are interested in doing crafts. Sometimes they have ends, and that's where we get a lot of our material from, which is a great way to repurpose that as well. Other things you'll need is 2 pieces of parchment paper, which, as you can see, I reuse some quite often. A cookie sheet that you don't mind sort of getting a bit messy. It's a great surface to do your ironing on. And then all of these ingredients are melted into my crock pot here, so they're like a liquid that we paint on to the fabric. The other piece is an iron, which we should make it warm. Perfect, because we'll need that in just a second. So the first step, once your ingredients are mixed together and melted, you're just going to simply place your parchment paper on a cookie sheet and place your fabric on top of that. And then be careful because things can be warm. The wax goes on best obviously when it's warm. We're just going to paint on right onto the fabric. And you don't need a lot. Basically, you just want the fabric to look wet. And this can take just a few minutes here. And it's also great just to get right to the edges because, of course, those are lots of the spaces that will stick to itself when we're trying to cover up, you know, a mug of food in the kitchen or wrap up a piece of cheese, whatever we might be using these wraps for. So you're just going to continue to paint until it's completely covered. And if you miss a small little spot on the fabric, not to worry because we are going to iron out the material as well. And I'll show you how that happens just momentarily here. So any materials that you plan to use to do this at home, like this crock pot, for example, will then have to sort of be dedicated to a craft like this, just simply because the wax can be tricky to scrape out of a pot. So I recommend going to a secondhand store, finding something that you can repurpose and continue to use for doing activities like this. Oops, we're almost there. You can obviously choose a bigger paintbrush, it would probably be a bit faster. And just go right to the edges here. Pretty sticky already. Perfect. All right, we'll just leave that there. All right, and so then the next step is to just take your second piece of parchment paper, place it right on top. Give it a good smooth push, just like that. And then you don't want your iron on to be super hot. It just needs to be warm enough to melt, to continue to melt the wax. So you just want to push down on your piece of parchment paper, right on your fabric. And what this does is, one, it gets sort of any sort of like lumps or chunks that could be sitting on top of your fabric that have dried really quickly, and also make sure that that material has soaked right through the fabric as well. You can bake the fabric as well in the oven instead of doing this way. I prefer the iron method just because it's easier to keep an eye on and you have a bit more control over that melting process as well. So once basically you can see, this is how I kind of judge it, is that you can sort of see the fabric right through your parchment paper, then you know that you've ironed it enough. So it really only is about 30 seconds of ironing. And if I peel off the top piece, And peel off the back piece. And you'll have a wet piece of fabric, but now you can just drape that over a laundry rack or the back of a chair or hang it on the clothesline, and it'll dry and you're ready to go. And that's it.